If I had a nickel for every time one of Joe Goldberg's love interests played a leading role in a bad video game adaptation, I would have
2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice, right?
What's up, schmucks? I hope you're having a wonderful fall season. I was until I watched the Five Nights at Freddy's movie, and now I'm miserable. But I've decided to turn my misery into content, which seems like the correct response. Typically, when I review a newly released movie, I speak in generalities. I start with the positives and move into the negatives, being careful not to spoil anything. Well, this will not be that, because I have such strong feelings that they need to be explained in great detail. Also, I have so much footage I can use, so there's no reason to keep this brief. So without further ado, let's jump into the FNAF movie. This might come as a surprise to a few of my returning schmucks, or even any of my IRL friends watching, but I am a pretty big Five Nights at Freddy's fan. Like, much bigger than any grown man in his 20s should be. Obviously, I'm kidding. Be a fan of whatever you want to be. I'm a comic book reader and a superhero fan. Who am I to judge anybody? But I remember when FNAF came out. I was in 7th grade, and my sister and I would watch all the game theories and play the games together. We had a great time, and I have been a big fan ever since. I've played every game except Security Breach because it was broken at launch and I just never got around to it. I've read one of the books, The Silver Eyes. I still watch all of the game theories, and I listen to every FNAF song that JT Music makes. But that's mostly because I like JT Music, but still. And for anybody curious, Bonnie and Springtrap are my favorites. Still, I'm pushing 30 and I'm not ready to abandon this franchise just yet. It's not my favorite or anything. You won't see me dedicating a shelf of my room to it the way I do for Batman or Spider-Man, but I do really like FNAF. And the reason I bring that up is because I think my stance on this series is important context for reviewing this movie. I've seen a lot of people come down negatively on this movie, and the first thing people rush to is,
well, you're not a fan. The movie was made for the fans. It wasn't made for you.
So, just saying right here, I am a fan. The movie was made for me, and I still thought it sucked. Regardless though, I mostly have seen everything from this series, and after my theater experience, believe me, I have seen everything in terms of bad theater etiquette. I saw this movie opening night in an absolutely packed theater, not an empty seat in the place kind of packed, and good gravy was it awful. I can tolerate some cheering and whooping. I was there opening night of No Way Home. I get it. But it was the cheering at literally every goddamn thing. The non-stop talking. The cringy kids trying to be funny the whole time. I was fucking miserable. Abby handed Bonnie a piece of paper and some kid a couple rows behind me yelled, "Is that Riz?" Shut the fuck up!
Ooh, my favorite content creator made a cameo.
Sure, cheer for that. I get it.
Well, that's no fun. You do realize that lunch is the most important meal of the day.
But cheering at someone saying the name of one of the only villains in the entire series in a moment where saying any other name would make no sense? What are you doing? I really can't explain this without sounding like I hate fun, because in principle, I understand being excited about seeing something you like on screen. I really do. I get giddy anytime I see Batman or Godzilla on the big screen. I'm a fan of those characters. I'm a fan of those properties, man. I get it. But at the same time, you went to see a movie in a movie theater, and you need to understand the #1 rule of a movie theater, as said by one Aiden Pierce.
Shut the fuck up.
Get excited, but do it quietly. Have a good time, but keep it to yourself. And I know my experience wasn't an isolated one. A lot of people have had the same thing happen to them at their showing. And what is genuinely concerning to me is that because the Five Nights at Freddy's audience is so young, they might think that this behavior is okay. So let me be clear. This is not acceptable behavior. This entire year, I have seen so many movies in the theater, and every time there has been talking or people on their phones and all that nonsense. It's been terrible. Is everybody's brain just fucking broken? Please stop being a jackass in the movie theater. Sit down with your overpriced popcorn, enjoy the movie you paid to see, and please do it quietly and respectfully. Not everybody is coming here for some kind of stadium experience. A lot of people just want to sit and watch a movie. Basically, I'd like to give you a life lesson that I learned when I was young, and I think it could help you not only in the movie theater, but it could also be applied to most places and about most things. Don't be a jerk. A big part of the conversation about this movie has been that this movie was made for the fans, and I can't really disagree with that. In fact, most movies based on existing IP or intellectual property are made with fans in mind. The only exception to this I can really think of is Joker, which is more concerned with being a remake of Taxi Driver than being a movie about the Joker. But movies like Five Nights at Freddy's fall into a thought experiment I like to call IP versus movies, with the million-dollar question being, what do you like more, the IP or the movies? Do you like an IP or a brand or a series more than you like storytelling and the art of filmmaking, or vice versa? This can be used with any long-running franchise. For example, Godzilla. I am a huge Godzilla fan. I have been since I was very little. And so when I watch Godzilla movies, my critic brain turns off a little bit. You know, the dial gets turned down. Godzilla King of the Monsters was a bad movie, but it had Godzilla in it, and that was enough for me. Now to get back to FNAF, do you like Five Nights at Freddy's or movies more? If you like the brand of Five Nights at Freddy's, then you're probably going to be satisfied with what you have here. But if you like movies and storytelling and competent filmmaking, then you're probably not gonna like this. I like movies more than I like FNAF, and thus, my like for this series cannot override my hatred for the incompetence of this movie, but I still am a fan of FNAF. So, before we look at this movie from a cinephile perspective, let's look at this movie that was made for the fans from a fan perspective. This movie is full of references to the wider FNAF series, from this guy's shirt being Midnight Motorist, to Sparky the dog being in Parts and Services, to Dream Theory, and then some less subtle and more egregious ones.
I always come back. What the hell are you talking about?
This movie is just stuffed to the brim with Easter eggs, but none of these references really mean anything to me. And when I talked to a friend of mine about my complaints with this film, they tried to tell me about all the Easter eggs, to which I said, I know, I got them all. And they hit me with something that was the most interesting thing I'd heard from someone about this movie. They said,
I'm confused as to why you didn't like the movie then.
Which was really telling to me. Reading between the lines, this basically says,
but they were references, Turkey. What more do you want?
And this left me with a burning question. Do FNAF fans know what movies are? References are great in a movie adapting an existing franchise. Don't get me wrong, they're fun. But references and Easter eggs alone do not and cannot make a movie. Let's use a recent release as an example. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Across the Spider-Verse has tons of references and Easter eggs to the wider Spider-Man IP. This guy right here, he's wearing the Mark III spider armor. This is the suit that Mary Jane wore in the Renew Your Vows comic run. Miguel O'Hara saying shocking is a thing he says in the comics.
Really fun cleaning up your shocking mess, by the way.
This is Frogman. Here's some Spider Slayers. Spectacular Spider-Man is here. This right here is from the Amazing Spider-Man 2 video game, and on and on and on. It's a movie that celebrates the decades of the Spider-Man mythos and does it in a fantastic way. But this movie is so much more than its references. It's a story about a young man trying to find himself as a person and a superhero. There's themes about destiny and fate. There's beautiful cinematography, astonishing animation, and it's all brought together to create a really excellent superhero story. The Easter eggs here work as toppings and sides, so to speak. Because the movie itself is as strong as it is, Easter eggs and the references are welcome additions to an already enjoyable experience. The Five Nights at Freddy's movie can't really say the same. There's references, sure, but what else does it offer you? Toothless horror, ugly cinematography, forgettable characters. But don't worry, Matt Pat was there. This spoon feeding of Easter eggs down the gullets of eager fans really rubbed me the wrong way, but a lot of people seem to really enjoy this. I guess you could say they took cake to the children. This movie also doesn't do anything with the existing lore FNAF has. This movie is so inconsequential to the wider universe, it may as well not even exist. Across the Spider-Verse took the concept of redoing origin stories and made it a part of its plot. Why did all three live-action Spideys lose someone close to them? Because that's how their multiverse works. Across the Spider-Verse uses the wider Spider-Man lore to create an exciting and interesting take on the classic Spider-Man stories. It uses existing lore and information to create a truly unique experience. FNAF has so much lore and the movie chooses to do nothing with it. There's no innovation, no creativity going on here, which is insanely disappointing because the story of Five Nights at Freddy's I find to be really fascinating. The base story behind FNAF is that William Afton's child dies, and so he proceeds to go on a journey of discovering the secrets to giving life. And through this, he becomes a vicious serial killer. His friendship with a genius inventor named Henry, and how their stories become interconnected, and how Mike fits into it as a guilt-ridden man hunting his father down, and then in the end of it all, when William Afton is finally slain, the spirits of his victims won't let him die, and they proceed to torture him for eternity. That is an incredible concept, and that's ignoring a ton of the little interesting things that happen within it all, like the baby stuff, the Springtrap stuff, the idea behind the toy animatronics, all of that shit. There are so many good ideas in this franchise. But sure, let's make a not scary horror movie about a sad man and his sister hanging out with robots. And then a man in an Iron Man suit shows up at the end. Yeah, that's where we should go with that. And I wasn't looking for the entire saga in one single movie, but this movie makes no attempt at working with any of FNAF's best ideas. And so, as a Five Nights at Freddy's fan, I found this movie to be so painfully uninteresting and spineless. It has so much lore to work with and refuses to use any of it, and I'm seemingly in the minority on this take. FNAF fans were given things they already knew and got excited about it. In my theater, when Guinevere Beck said the killer's name was William Afton, everyone cheered. Why? What name did you think she was gonna say? Why was that worth getting excited about? But seemingly, that's enough for FNAF fans. They saw some Easter eggs, a couple influencers they like, and they called it cinema. And so I guess my question is that truly enough for you? Do you judge a movie's merits based on how many references to the brand it can stuff into its runtime? Do you not care about engaging stories or memorable characters? Or do you acknowledge this movie's shortcomings as a film, but are so in love with FNAF that you don't really care? I don't know. Feel free to answer any of these questions, but I'm just curious and a little perplexed. Five Nights at Freddy's tells the story of Mike Schmidt, played by the ever so lovely Josh Hutcherson. Mike can't keep a job and is struggling to care for his little sister Abby, played by Piper Rubio. However, when Matthew Lillard gives Mike a new job, everything changes. Mike's new job is to spend 5 evenings at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and guard it, make sure no one comes in. Through this career opportunity, he meets Elizabeth Lale's character Vanessa, but also meets the restaurant's mascots, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy, and of course, Freddy Fazbear. As the 5 nights progress, things get gradually weirder and secrets are revealed about the restaurant and its history. Also, Mike's been trying to relive a memory of his brother's abduction to see if he can explore the memory to find whoever took him. Also, Abby bonds with the animatronics. Also, in the end, it's revealed that the robots are possessed by the child ghosts of Matthew Lillard's victims. There's a lot going on in this movie, but there also isn't. We're getting into it. So let me run through what I thought was good here. First up, I'm going to praise the one thing everyone's praising. Matthew Lillard is fantastic in this. He isn't in this a lot, but when he is, he steals every moment. He also has the single best line delivery in the movie.
How's the pay?
Not great, but the hours are worse.
And when he's finally turned loose in the third act, he's just running circles around everybody. He's great.
Little ones tell me you have a sister. She will love it here.
I also really like the set design of the animatronics themselves. The pizzeria is brought to life so meticulously, it's really impressive. Same goes for the animatronics. They look like they were ripped right out of the game. They're really cool. I really think the animatronics were really well realized, but really poorly handled, which we will talk about later. This movie also has bursts of style and substance. There's some decent cinematography in the opening sequence. I really like the music that plays in the opening sequence. Just a solid banger. Speaking of the opening sequence, I really like the animation that plays in the beginning, a fun reference to the 8-bit minigames, and also looks really cool. You know, for the first few minutes of this movie, I really thought I was in for something. You know, I thought that maybe the trailers were just bad, maybe the marketing was just lackluster, and you know, maybe I was about to watch something that was gonna be really cool. But unfortunately, they were not cooking. So, as for all the things I didn't like, let's start with the characters. Boring and uninteresting. All of them. Fine performances, I guess, but not a single character is engaging or memorable here. Mike isn't anything, he's just sad. Abby is the most adorable kid in a horror movie since Danny Torrance, but is nothing beyond that. And Guinevere Beck is here, I guess. Even Willie Afton is nothing, but I have more to say about him later, so I'm gonna save it for then. But to accompany a boring cast of uninteresting characters is a boring and uninteresting plot. Like I said earlier, the actual story of Five Nights at Freddy's is super interesting and really insane. There's a part of it where a big robot wears a man man as a skin suit. That's fucking awesome. But the movie decides to harp on an uninteresting tale of a sad man who's down on his luck and needs a job. And then there's a mean aunt who wants to take his sister away. And then there's a cop who's barely a character at all, and she's just kind of here. And then there's a reveal that a person you've never met or heard of before was a serial killer you've never met or heard of before. Then there's another reveal that you did meet this guy in one scene at the start of the movie. It's all just so nothing. It was like watching someone jangle keys in front of your face for 2 hours.
Jingling keys.
His name is William F.
Fun for babies, not for Batman.
All they had to do was make a tight little horror movie about a guy who gets a job here, and then the animatronics get a little quirky and try to kill him at night, and he keeps coming back for whatever reason. You can keep the dream stuff, but have the kids be like actually weird and creepy in the dream, trying to mess with Mike, you know? Maybe they're trying to get him to leave. Maybe they're trying to just fuck with him because they're assholes. But either way, we should get some semblance of the man in the rabbit suit. We should get something that shows who this guy is and what he did to these children. You can keep all the dream stuff, but maybe have a part where the kids tell him that they possess the robots because the man in the rabbit suit killed them. And every once in a while, he comes back to the pizzeria. And when he's here next, we need you to kill him for us, Mike. Or maybe Mike even knows that the man in the rabbit suit killed his brother, but could never prove it. So he accepts this job to search for clues, which puts him and Afton on a collision course. No Abby subplot, no Vanessa, no fluff. Just a simple, effective little horror movie. You can even keep the boss fight at the end if you want, but make it matter, make it mean something. Don't just throw nonsense into your movie and hope the devoted fan base of 12-year-olds eat it up. Or, you know, they could literally just adapt the story the games create. Most of that story doesn't actually happen in the games. Most of it is picked up through context clues or background information. Most of it's just pieced together. You don't see a lot of it really happen. So, you know, you could just make that movie. Show everybody what happens between the games while adapting some things that we saw in the games. I didn't know how to segue into this, but I do want to talk about the building a fort thing, because it seems to be the one piece of this movie that people are a little divided on. So, initially, having the animatronics be nice to Mike and Abby, I really liked that. It was the only thing in this movie that felt like a true innovation of the FNAF lore. Going into this, I had only perceived these guys as antagonistic killer robots, but to then see them be chill and friendly completely caught me off guard. I thought that was a neat concept, that maybe there's more to them than anger and bloodlust. Then they build a fort. I don't know. I get it. You know, they're kids and blah, 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 blah. But this was just too much for me. And I know they're grooming Mike and Abby because they're trying to win them over so that Mike is willing to give them Abby. But why do they even want Abby? Vanessa says they want to make her like them. Is that a them thing? Is that an Afton thing? And if it is an Afton thing, why doesn't he just kill her? He's a child murderer. He used to just lure these kids away and stab them, I guess. Why not just do that? And why do the animatronics need to make a deal with Mike? Just kill him and take Abby. Like, what are you doing? Just fucking, ugh. Awful. Terrible. Bad. This horror movie also isn't scary, which is something some people are defending. So I have two rebuttals to this. One for FNAF fans and one for general audiences. For FNAF fans, do you remember what series this is? Most of the Five Nights at Freddy's games are genuinely scary and are designed to be so. They are effective horror games. So to then see an adaptation of that not really honor that doesn't make you upset in any way. For general audiences, why would you accept a horror movie that has no horror? Would you accept a comedy that doesn't make you laugh? But we can actually analyze why the Five Nights at Freddy's movie isn't scary, and you'll see that it's more than just my own personal taste. The horror in this movie is non-existent due to one key issue: bad cinematography. Fear of the dark is primal, and the Five Nights at Freddy's games play into that. Looking through the cameras, you'd see an animatronic shrouded in darkness, which added to the tension. You might even lean into your computer screen to get a closer look and then jump scared. Not entirely comprehending what you're looking at creates an unnerving feeling inside you, the fear of the unknown. Whereas in the movie, the animatronics are bathed in light. The movie wants you to see them, which on one hand, I get. Jim Henson's Creature Shop worked really hard on these. I'd want to show them off too. But by doing that, it ruins the fear factor. I can see every screw, every scratch, every piece of fabric, and it takes everything away from them. The fear is gone, the intrigue is gone, and I'm left looking at a cool character design, but not an allegedly scary movie monster. A good horror movie will use lighting to its advantage and not entirely show you the monster, using light sparingly to weaponize darkness against the viewer. If done well, it can be very effective and very tense. This movie doesn't understand that or doesn't want to do it, and therefore it makes the movie not scary. In a horror movie, great. I also brought all these complaints to a FNAF fan because I wanted their perspective, and they told me,
well, the games don't have a coherent story or proper characters, so the movie didn't need to have any of that either.
which I swear took a solid 4 years off my life. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about is William Afton, because his inclusion is easily my biggest problem with this movie. While Matthew Lillard is fantastic, William Afton is not. He's barely in the movie, which on its own wouldn't really be an issue, but then in the last 20 minutes of the movie, Beck from You starts hyping him up like we're supposed to care, and then she name drops him, which made all the FNAF fans really excited. But to any normal person, they're not gonna know who that is or why that matters. And it's meant to be a reveal because when she says it, there's a pause, there's a moment for you to take in that information.
His name is William Afton.
Is my jaw supposed to drop?
But there's no information to take in. If I'm not a Five Nights at Freddy's fan and I'm just some guy, I don't know who William Afton is. Why does that mean anything to me? I haven't seen anything about this guy in a yellow rabbit suit. This just means nothing to me. But you're treating it like a reveal, like I'm supposed to care, like I'm supposed to feel something. And you just don't. And then a man in an Iron Man suit shows up, and then he takes off the helmet, and it's Matthew Lillard. We saw this guy once at the beginning of the movie, and all of a sudden he's back and using a different name. Why should I give a shit? Why is he here? Why did he do all this? How does he control the ghost children? Oh, he's defeated and it doesn't matter. Let's talk about the suit. It looks great. Like visually, this looks fantastic. I love it. But it's an Iron Man suit. It even makes all those noises. He also has super strength for some reason. And when he puts the helmet on, the eyes start to glow. This is fucking stupid, I'm sorry. It's not an exosuit, it's a mascot costume. They even say that. Why does he have super strength? Why do the eyes glow? What the... Also, the spring locks in live action are really stupid. In the game, when Phone Guy tells you about them, that's one thing, because you don't see them and you can connect dots in your mind and imagine how they might exist. But to actually see them...
They were designed to keep the animatronic parts in place so that a person could safely wear the suit. They tend to be pretty unstable. Let's see.
That's a bear trap. He's wearing a fucking bear trap. Why would anyone build this? And then why would you wear it? This just does not translate to live action. Or maybe it would. I don't know. Just this didn't translate to live action. Also, while I do like this design, I think it's maybe a little too bulky. In my mind, William Afton always kind of had like a, I don't know, like a funny little rabbit costume, you know? You know what Glitch Trap looks like? To me, that is William Afton in the suit in the real world. That's what I always imagined it looking like. That just makes more sense to me. The fact that William shows up out of nowhere is also a huge narrative issue too. The whole movie is kind of lacking an antagonist. It's kind of the mean aunt, but not really. Actually, you know what? Quick tangent. She died, right? Like, Golden Freddy killed her in that house, right? So when Mike and Abby go home, that corpse is just lying on the floor. What did they do with that? There's no police investigation afterwards. Their lives go back to normal. Did they hide that body? Did they call the police and they were like, yeah, some ghost kid and a big robot killed her, and they accepted that? There's like a blank spot there, and it bothers me. I need to know what happened. Anyway, antagonists. It's not the mean aunt, and it's not the animatronics, because they don't really pose a threat to our protagonists until the end, but then, surprise, it's a dude you haven't met yet. William's impact is never felt. The kids are dead because of him. Mike is here because of him. Mike and Abby's lives are messed up because of him. Vanessa is here because of him. He has all this influence on the characters and their placement in this movie, but he has no impact on the movie itself, and he only really shows up in the last 15 minutes of the movie. Steve Raglan doesn't count narratively because as far as we know, that's just a Matthew Lillard cameo. If you didn't know anything about this movie, you're not going to know that that's William Afton. You're not going to care. It's just, oh, Matthew Lillard's in this. That's fun. You don't know who this is until the end of the movie.
Well, the fans do.
Shut up! This isn't how you structure a story. I would have loved a creepy scene where the ghost children influence Mike's dream and show him William in the rabbit suit lure a child into the woods. Show Mike who they're all afraid of. Give us, the audience, a reason to give a shit who this is and make us feel the weight of what he did. Like I said, he is tied directly to most of the characters in this movie, but has no fucking presence. He has 2 scenes! Awful!
Why do people watch this and think that this is normal and good?
They also force him to scream his most famous line, but it makes no sense to us or the characters.
I always come. I
always come back.
When have you come back previously? I always come back. When did you go anywhere to then return from? Awful. Really terrible stuff. Oh, but the fans get it. It's for the fans.
Shut your mouth.
Simply put, they should have given William Afton actual presence. Make it feel like he matters. Make him feel like a proper threat I should fear and a proper villain I should be glad to see lose. Because the way he's presented here, he's an afterthought and hardly an interesting one. In conclusion, I hated this movie. I hated it because it should have been better and I wanted it to be better. It had so much material to work with, so many interesting ideas, and they chose to actively ignore those ideas. To work within a series built off so many fascinating subplots and concepts and take every opportunity to do nothing with them, the only word I have is disappointing. So very disappointing. The movie has no scares to speak of, no interesting characters, fundamentally misunderstands what made FNAF scary, and spoon feeds you surface level Easter eggs and expects you to be happy with it. And somehow, some people are happy with it. And I'm not judging you. If you really loved this movie, more power to you. This movie hurt me, man. It hurt me as a movie lover, and it hurt me as a fan of FNAF. This movie feels like everyone involved flipped me off, handed me a pile of slop, and told me to enjoy. This movie was disappointing, and in terms of FNAF movies, is this really as good as it gets? To me, this movie is the epitome of laziness. It has no substance or style and is just riding off the backs of devoted fans who just want to see a thing they recognize. I hope the inevitable sequel can learn from its mistakes and make efforts to be much better, but judging by how financially successful this movie was, it's a little unlikely they're going to take any risks with the next one. If you want to see some good FNAF content, I highly recommend the series Jake Ryan Southgate is making. It's some of the coolest stuff to come out of the FNAF community in a long time. I'm really enjoying what they're creating. But I want to end positively and say thank you to anyone still watching. I haven't made a ton of videos this year, but I'm aiming to pump out some bangers before the year is over, so stay tuned for some fun stuff. That's gonna do it for today, my beautiful schmucks, but don't worry, I'll be back. I always come back.